every February, I hope. Last February I was here. This February I'm here, and you hear me publicly say, please may I come back next February, Dr. Schlesinger. Be careful of your thoughts, for your thoughts become your words. Be careful of your words, for your words become your deeds. Be careful of your deeds, for your deeds become your habits. Be careful of your habits, for your habits become your character. Be careful of your character, for your character becomes your destiny. Author Anonymous. And this moment together, it's all about leadership, it's all about ethics, and it is all about destiny. It is the destiny of 3 great colleges, and it's the destiny of our country and our democracy. All of us are learning lessons on our own journey to leadership. Among the first I learned a long time ago was that leadership is a matter of how to be, not how to do. You and I spend most of our lives learning how to do, and then we're teaching other people how to do, and yet we know in the end it is the quality and the character of the leader that determines the performance, the results. And that's why you can't separate leadership and ethics. Today, we are facing some of the greatest challenges in my lifetime. In my own country, the lowest level of trust and the highest level of cynicism in my own country. And the backdrop of our conversation, our dialogue this evening is as serious, it's as challenging, as difficult as any of us has faced in a long, long time. We're facing massive change all over the world, in a world at war. And yet, I am filled with hope because students present this evening, the students of this generation in university campuses, college campuses, our academies, it is this generation that, in the end, will save the society, and I am quoting Peter Drucker. Now, Warren Bennis calls your generation, young men and women now on campuses, military academies, he calls you the crucible generation. And you research for a long time. I have been saying that this generation right now, for the last 10 years, I have been saying this generation is very different from previous cohorts. And now, it's what I've been feeling. I've never talked to a group of university college students where anyone came up and said, how can I make the greatest amount of money in the fastest way? No, they come up and say, I spent the last 6 months in Darfur. It is amazing, or this is how I'm volunteering. There's something incredible about your generation. I've been writing about you and speaking about you based on my own experience on the ground. And now what are we finding? Solid research. And the researchers are saying your generation is more like the 1930s and the 1940s than any generation since. And we call that generation the greatest generation. In the late summer of 2001, before our world changed forever on September 11th, I often quoted Peter Drucker to various audiences. I would say, Peter Drucker is not a pessimist, but he is very sober about the next 10 years. He sees great political turmoil, and I'm quoting him, in many parts of the world, including the United States. And people would come up to me and say, "What's wrong with Peter Drucker? My heavens, everything is so wonderful." And people would shake their heads because life was wonderful in that lovely bubble of summer of 2000, summer of 2001. But we look at history and how sadly prescient were Peter's observation of the future. So today, whether we are a great college, and you have three right here that inspire all of us, the Ford Motor Company that we know very well, Girl Scouts of the USA, doesn't matter what organization, as we hurtle into the future in this crucible of massive change, there is no time to negotiate with nostalgia for those old, irrelevant, outmoded policies and practices and procedures and assumptions. And our quickly changing, turbulent times do not accommodate that neat and tidy, but this is the way we have always done it. So our first leadership imperative, wherever we are, is to challenge the gospel of the status quo, the practices, the procedures, the assumptions of the past. They're out. And we keep only those 21st century strategies and practices that will be relevant in the future. Be relevant not just to us, those we lead, those we serve, and in this new world that your generation is going to build. So we have the courage to practice planned abandonment. This is Peter Drucker's term. It means keeping your mission and vision and values, the soul of the organization, centered and aligned, and then we slough off the vestiges of the past that spell irrelevance in the future. We get our house in order. And that means we exercise very tough discipline in moving innovation across the enterprise. And this requires developing today. And that's what these three colleges are doing. We develop today the leaders of the future, leaders of change, to lead the organization of change in a great country. And this is the second great leadership imperative. Developing today leaders of change, leaders of the future, as your colleges are doing. Now, today, leaders in many societies, certainly in the United States and so far, I've spoken or represented our country in 68 countries around the world. And it is as true around the world that leaders in many, many societies, even where the country isn't going that way, we have young leaders who are. In all three sectors, they're saying the old answers don't fit the new questions. And across the sectors, doesn't matter which of the three, there are common questions and common challenges. And there is this powerful call for principled leadership, and leading change calls our own country, countries around the world, for effective, ethical leaders of every enterprise and at every level of every enterprise. Not a leader, or you remember the little pyramid with the leader standing on the top? Long gone, long dead. We need effective, ethical leaders dispersing the responsibilities of leadership right across the organization, as you will do, because dispersed leadership is the leadership of the future. Gone is the old hierarchy. You know, when we had charts with people in boxes and we used hierarchical language, up, down, top, bottom, superior, subordinate? Have you ever met a young person who said, I can't wait to become a subordinate? Of course not. We throw out that old hierarchy. So leaders like you will have a wonderful phrase. You'll just say, we ban the hierarchy, and that's it. On our website, you'll find an article that I wrote, Managing in a World That Is Round. It's all about circular management. Flat, fluid, flexible, goodbye, up, down, top, bottom. And there is a new language in the colleges. And what you are doing, your innovation, is an inspiration to all three sectors. And we develop leaders at every level, but you are developing the leaders of the future. So our times call for ethical leaders with a moral compass that works full-time, who embody the mission, who live the values, who keep the faith. And the great challenge is leading change. And this is a shared leadership imperative, for we are all on a journey to transformation. And our fellow travelers will be those we serve with, and all those out there waiting to be served. Now, this chair at West Point is a wonderful challenge, and it's one of the greatest honors I will ever have in my life. It's a 2-year appointment, and the first 2 people in the chair happen to be General Eric Shinseki and Coach K of Duke. And so I am the first woman and the first non-graduate in that chair. And every 6 weeks I go there. And I have a team. There are 6 faculty members, 5 are men, 1 is women. They're wonderfully diverse. They're all graduates of West Point. They have all served in Iraq. And they are brilliant and wonderful faculty members. And the 6 are my planning team. So the first time I went to West Point for the planning session, I was to bring the plan. Well, I thought, I can't take a plan with me. So I'm sitting there with all of these 5 colonels and 1 major. And I said something. I told them what a great honor this was. But I said, I cannot bring a plan. I've tried to think, but until I meet you and I listen to you and I know what your expectations are, I can't even think about a plan. So I took my notebook. I said, I've come with an empty notebook. And they all laughed. And when they finally stopped laughing, they said, well, we feel the same way. And they all went like this. We came with an empty notebook. Well, that was the most marvelous beginning. And we had a mission and 5 goals. If you have more than 5, you have none, we remembered. And I said, but I don't want to come every 6 weeks for 2 years and work with cadets as much as I love cadets. I want to bring a great thought leader with me every 6 weeks. They'll be very different, and 2 of us will just sit like this, and we'll begin a little dialogue. And instead of the cadets sitting in those benches and chairs and tables, I want everybody to be in a circle. Well, they just thought that was the most reasonable thing in the world, and they loved the idea. They said, what kind of people? I said, well, have you ever heard of Dr. Leonard Schlesinger? And have you ever heard of Alan Mulally of Ford? And have you ever heard of Marshall Goldsmith? And how about Margot Tyler of the Gates Foundation? And one of the greatest heroes in the military, General Lloyd Austin III. They looked at me and they said, you don't think you could get General Austin, do you? I said, yes. Well, they said, but these other, I said, to be with you, they'll say yes. Well, they all cheered, and so I started building the marvelous 2 years of great thought leaders. And my friend and his friend and their friend, they will be there. And think what that will mean. Instead of one person speaking, those marvelous cadets will be sitting in a room, and there will be a dialogue. And they will have this living example of 3 great leaders in the academic world who should be competing, but instead they're giving this brilliant example of collaboration, alliance, partnership. So this is one of the most exciting parts of my life. And so every 6 weeks I go, and one of the things that interests me, the first time they asked me to come alone, I think we were vetting me, and I was saying how I liked the place. And when I left, I said to team service, we don't want people at desks and tables. We want to be a circle. Well, next time everybody has a lovely big chair, and we're a lovely big circle. And the faculty is as excited about the great thought leaders as the cadets. And I'm just so grateful to you and to you for considering making this kind of contribution. One thing that I thought was so interesting after my first dialogue with the cadets all by myself, when it was over, one of the cadets came up to me and said, are you always this positive? Well, I don't think myself is. So first I was joking. I said, well, you see, even my blood type is B positive, which is true. But he said, you come through. He said, I've heard you before when you've been here. You're always so positive. What do you think I said? I said, the reason I am so positive and I am so filled with hope is because I have a chance to be with your generation, because you are the future. And I told him how I feel about it. Right now, this is the generation that is going to sustain the democracy, will save the society, and all the research says you are more like the 1930s and 40s than any generation since. Now, I've been feeling this, but I'm not a researcher. I just felt it on the ground. I've never had a disappointing experience with the hundreds of college and university groups I've been with. So this is a gift to me this evening, and I'm very, very grateful. I try to be disciplined about traveling abroad, and until this year, I have been doing 3 times a year. With West Point, I'll do 1 a year. Last year, I went to Stuttgart, to Germany. The U.S. Army has a new command for Africa. It's called AFRICOM. And General Kip Ward said, would you come over and talk to my people? Well, of course I would. So I went there, and June was South Korea, where they were celebrating Peter Drucker's 100th birthday. I don't think they were doing this in Chicago, but they were doing it in Korea. And then October, I went to 3 cities in China in 3 days, 2 speeches and 2 media events. I flew into Beijing, and the next day spoke that day, and 2 media events, then got on a plane, went to Nanchang, and repeated the same program, and that afternoon went to Shanghai, and then the next day to Hong Kong. And when I was leaving, they said, do you realize in 5 days you've spoken to 5,000 people? A couple thousand were university students, and they were celebrating Peter Drucker's centennial. Now think about that. And it was, and I'm going to ask you a question. When I got home, I had, they just are wonderfully open and loving people. When I got home, I had all this mail and all the email. In every one word was used, the same word. They were all very appreciative, very wonderful. But what was the single word that was in every single email or letter? There was a huge monetary award for the person who got it. I don't hear anything. You're university students. I spoke to thousands of them. What was the one word?
Hope.
Value. Hope? That's good, but it's not right. What was the one word? Just think, business leaders, a university president, all kinds of university students, all kinds of people. Every letter or email had one word.
Appreciate.
You're close. You almost, respect. Now, I did not use this word, but I got all this mail. Thank you for respecting us. Thank you for bringing your respect to China. Thank you for respecting the Chinese people. And then finally, a university professor wrote one that clarified it for me. He said, and he was very formal, "Dear, highly respected and greatly honored Mrs. Frances Hesselbein." That was the first line. Thank you for bringing your respect to China and for respecting us. But then the next sentence touched my heart. He said, it wasn't in your words. It was in your message. So I think all of us are in situations where we're using language, we're using words, but how we feel about them come through. We don't have to say it. Now, whether you're in a class, wherever you are, respect all over the world. It's the value, one of the values most highly, highly revered, appreciated. But I had to go to 3 cities in China and 2 days in Hong Kong to learn that lesson. I've been doing a lot of travel. 68 countries is a lot for someone like me, but I have this sense of urgency that somehow, right now, this incredible openness, doors are open that were never open before. This new openness might not always be here, so I believe we are called to keep this kind of dialogue alive, the kind you are having in all 3 of your colleges. And we're going to keep those doors open. I'll go abroad only once this year because of West Point. I'll go to Oxford. This will be my 4th Oxford conclave on global ethics. And who will be part of this small group? College and university presidents from the United States who go to King's College, and we stay there, and maybe 25 of us are there for 5 days, and it's called the Oxford Conclave on Global Ethics. So there's something remarkable these days about human needs and health needs that are escalating so rapidly, and there are new challenges. My generation isn't doing anything about it, and I'm afraid Dr. Schlesinger's generation is not. There are 1 million school children in New York City. 500,000 will not get a high school diploma. No diploma, no hope, no job, no future, and you know what happens to hundreds and thousands of them. I was mentioning this in a speech to a large group of business leaders. When I finished, a man came up, he said, "You think 1 out of 2 is bad? I'm from Los Angeles. We graduate 1 in 5. I said, "Yes, and you have the largest number of your own people incarcerated of any state in this country, and you have a 70% recidivism rate." And we read about California sending thousands of prisoners to other states because they can't house them all. What would have happened in this country if these had not been invisible children? If we had said, these are our children, and we had seen that every child had a chance to have a high school diploma, at least. Long ago, William Butler Yeats, excuse me, Yeats wrote, "Education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire." And I think it is your generation called to light that fire, and the day of the partnership is upon us. And so I think what the 3 presidents are doing, and the students who are part of that leadership and ethics course, it's a model for the whole country, and I love to tell other groups about you. So today, if you and I share a vision, now that vision shimmers far, far in the distance. And our vision of the future is a country of healthy children, strong families, decent neighborhoods, good schools, work that dignifies, and all embraced in this diverse, inclusive, cohesive community that cares about all of its people. And we can't find many communities that fit that description, but you're the leaders of the future, and you are going to move us beyond the old walls, and you're going to build a healthy community as energetically as all of you have built these colleges in this future. And so today we see corporations seeing corporate social responsibility as their responsibility, and that's a great movement at the moment. But the 4th great imperative is to build a richly diverse enterprise today if we are going to be viable, relevant, even present 10 years from now, and providing equal access to all of our people and all of our children is a leadership imperative essential, absolutely essential to achieving significance in the new century. So leaders in all 3 sectors have to send this powerful message. Our goal is to provide equal access for growth and learning and development and participation to students and to workers and management and all of the people in our country's population. And this isn't a message or a function that we give to someone else. And we see it as enormous opportunity, never as, oh, what a challenge. No, enormous opportunity. And so the only way it works is this vibrant message of equal access in this richly diverse organization with civility and good manners in the execution. And it has to come right from the leaders, leading from the front, not pushing from the rear. And so when we see diversity and inclusion, it's an enormous opportunity. We light that fire. You are on your journey to leadership, and as I told you, my definition of leadership is a matter of how to be, not how to do. And if we're going to succeed in the future, we have to manage for the mission, we have to manage for innovation, and we manage for diversity, because you're going to be the leaders of change and leading for the greater good. Now, I wonder if you would do something for me. Would you accept an assignment? Okay, up there? You will report only to yourselves, okay? All right. Now, I was speaking to a large group of chief learning officers of large corporations. And as you can imagine, after the speech, all the questions were very profound, no insignificant questions, but the last one, no one had ever asked me. This young man got up and said, Mrs. Hesselbein, what was the defining moment that determined the person you are, the leader you have become? No one had ever asked me that. Now I want you to think. I'm going to tell you mine. I want you to think. Somewhere in your lifetime, there was a defining moment that determined the person you are today, the young leader you have become. Now, this is my defining moment. I never thought of it. And when he asked me the question, I heard myself saying, I'm standing there and I heard myself saying, I was 8 years old. And I adored my grandparents. I lived in big steel, Johnstown, Pennsylvania. They lived 9 miles away in a little railroad coal mining town, South Fork, Pennsylvania, mountains of western Pennsylvania. And my grandfather had a little men's clothing store. He sold men's clothing to miners and railroaders. He was Justice of the Peace from the time he was 38 until he died at 96. He played the pipe organ in the Methodist Church every Sunday morning. Now, my grandparents had 7 children. It seemed only normal to build this nice big frame house in this mining community, and it seemed only normal to them to build into the side of a tall music room a small church-sized pipe organ. Now, I loved that music room, and up above, high up above, where it would have been dark, were stained glass windows that had little sparkly rays. So every Saturday I went to be with my grandmother, Mama Wicks, and I adored her, but above the keyboard of the pipe organ were 2 beautiful old Chinese vases. And every Saturday I would say, Mama Wicks, may I touch the Chinese vases? No one may ever touch. May I please just hold one? No one may ever touch the Chinese vases. Finally, one Saturday, I'm 8 years old and I'm feeling very assertive, I guess. I actually stamped my foot at my grandmother. I said, I want those vases. Instead of saying, what a bad girl you are, she took me by my little back and there's the pipe organ, and here was a little love seat facing it, and the vases. And she said, let me tell you about those vases. Long, long, long ago, when your mother was 8 years old, in this town there was a Chinese laundryman, Mr. Yi, and he had a little white shed. He lived behind the counter, and every Tuesday he picked up your grandfather's shirts and brought them back Thursday, washed, starched, beautifully ironed. And some days, she said, your mother would come home and her little sisters, and they would be crying because the bad boys were chasing Mr. Yi and calling him bad names, Chinky, Chinky, Chinaman, and worse. And one day, she said, there was a knock on the kitchen door. She said, I went to the door, and there was Mr. Yi. Now, Mr. Yi wore Chinese dress, a robe, and a little cap, and he had a queue. And he stood there with a package wrapped in newspaper. And my grandmother said, oh, Mr. Yi, please come in. Won't you sit down? He handed her the package, and he said, this is for you. And she opened the package, and inside were two very old Chinese vases. And my grandmother said, well, Mr. Yi, these are far too valuable. I couldn't accept these. He said, I want you to have them. And he said, I have been here for 10 years, and they won't let me bring my wife and children, and I miss them too much. I'm going back to China, and the vases are all I brought with me, and I want you to have them. And my grandmother said, but Mr. Yi, why do you want me to have them? He had tears. He said, Mrs. Wicks, I have been in this town for 10 years, and you're the only person who ever called me Mr. Yi. I cried my heart out for Mr. Yi, and I never forgot it. And when my grandmother died, there was a little note. I want Frances to have Mr. Yi's vases. Now, that was the beginning of respect for all people. And years later, January 1998, I am in the White House in the East Room, and 6 of us are sitting. The Marine Band had played, and there was a little stage 2 steps high, and we were about to receive our country's highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And I kept hearing David Rockefeller on one side and Admiral Zumwalt on the other, and James Farmer, the great civil rights leader. And I kept thinking, why? I was just overwhelmed. And Commander Huey, a naval commander, and the President Clinton would read the citations, and the president would read part, and then Commander Huey, and then this is the baby one, the beautiful big Presidential Medal of Freedom would be hung around your neck. So it was my turn, and the president had been saying, Admiral Zumwalt, will you please come up? And Admiral Zumwalt would be escorted by a young naval officer, and we'd go up 2 steps, and then Mr. David Rockefeller, will you please come up? When it was my turn, the president leaned over the lectern and said in this real cozy voice, anyone who knows Frances Hesselbein knows she does not permit hierarchical language to be used in her presence. So I will ask this pioneer for women, diversity, opportunity, Frances Hesselbein, will you please come, not up, will you please come forward? Which was the only joke of the day. But when I heard him say diversity, inclusion, as I walked toward the President of the United States, my grandmother and Mr. Yee were with me. Now, each one of you has a defining moment. That was mine. South Fork, Pennsylvania, 8 years old. Now, I think it would be wonderful if we could talk, have a dialogue. Do we have a few minutes?
All the time you want.
We want.
All the time we want.
We want, yes, yes. See, I have to watch him.
I have a ways to go and a few years to get it right.
I think if we ever all get to where you are, we'll be blessed. Obviously, he's one of my heroes. Any questions? Anything anyone would like to say? Please.
I have a younger sister who's 13 and a Girl Scout, and I was wondering if I were to give her any piece of advice, what do you think that would be or should be?
All right, you have a young sister who is 13 and she is a Girl Scout. First, tell her Francis Hesselbein said, okay? I would say to her that the Girl Scout promise and law, if today the promise she makes and lives, if she keeps that with her for the rest of her life, it will be one of the strongest, I don't know what word you would use, not support, but it will give her the kind of strength you need for any situation. How old is she?
13.
When you're 13 years old, you stand with 10 or 15 or 20 other 13-year-olds and you say, on my honor, I will try to serve God and my country, to help other people at all times, and to live by the Girl Scout law. You know, those aren't just words. And the older she gets, the deeper the meaning. And so I would just encourage her, and you tell her you met another Girl Scout, and every day of my life, I'm grateful for that experience. I began my whole career in the basement of the Second Presbyterian Church in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, where there were 30 little girls 10 years old, and I had no desire to be a Girl Scout leader. I had a little boy, tiny little boy, and this neighborhood chairman kept chasing me around saying, oh, you have to be a Girl Scout leader. I'd say, no, I'm sorry. So one day she came with this sad story. 30 little girls, 10 years old, basement of the Second Presbyterian Church. Their leader had gone to India to be a missionary. They were going to have to disband the troop. Well, of course. I said, okay, I'll take it for 6 weeks, and then we're going to find a real leader. She hands me the Girl Scout handbook. That was my training. And that first Monday night, I go down to the steps to the basement, and here are these 30 little 10-year-olds yelling and running, and for the first and last time of my life, I said, I am your leader. And then we stayed together for 8 years until they all graduated from high school. I still hear from them. But no matter where I go, here or abroad, can be a senator, can be a university president, women will come up to me and they say the same thing. I was a Girl Scout. And I say the same thing back. Of course you were. Where did little girls have a chance, young women have a chance to be leaders, not just read about leadership? So give her my fondest wishes and tell her I remember all those years. Eventually, I ended up as CEO of Girl Scouts of the USA, I don't think we ever could have achieved what we had achieved, the total transformation of that 3.5 million member organization, if many of us had not had the same experience I had. And it's true. Thank you. Please.
If you were sitting in one of our seats today,
I beg your pardon?
if you were our age and in our generation, and you were going to graduate, what would be your first order of business or the first thing you would do?
No one ever asked me that. Okay, I'm about to graduate. Well, I think I would have been thinking, where do I go? And it would have been changing. But I'm ready to graduate. I guess I would think, where can I make the greatest difference? And what will have the greatest meaning to me? I wouldn't just want a job. I would want to do something where I could make a difference and learn every day of my life and change other people's lives. I guess I would look at the social sector, and that includes colleges, universities, all the nonprofits. I would find somewhere where the mission would light that fire. I would think, if that's the mission, if there's the values, I want to be part of it. Nothing else, nothing less. And if I would say to the gentleman talking to me about a job, and I would say, what is your mission? And he would say, oh, I think we have one somewhere. Maybe it's in the annual report. I would find a way to get out fast. If we're not mission-focused, values-based, and demographics-driven, and right now, one of the greatest experts on becoming the demographics now, but what they will be in a few years is Dr. Schlesinger. It's going to be a totally different world. What were the percentages you gave me?
Declines in the college-age applicant pool in New England through 2022, and 80% of the growth in the generation that will come to college over the next 15 years will be largely from the Hispanic community, almost entirely first generation, and without financial means.
It's going to be a very different, with enormous opportunities to make a difference. But every day is a gift, and we use it. Of course, I think you don't say, well, what's in it for me? It's a lot more fun if you say, if I do this, look at the impact it will have. Look at the changes I can make. Just remember, you're not just any generation. You're more like the 1930s and 40s, we now call the greatest generation, and I feel this, I've experienced it, but the great researchers say this is who you are. And you're going to have all the opportunity to, as Drucker would say, save the society, change the world. Your generation will not look at 4 out of 5 children in Los Angeles and say, well, they don't need a high school diploma. We'll just build more jails. No. Just a little help. And you're the people who can do it. A little bit of help with enormous, enormous results.
Let's take one more question here and then retire to the classroom.
Yes.
One more here?
You mentioned teaching as a large part of leadership. I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit more to that, because I was personally planning on eventually being a teacher of some sort, and I feel there's a lot of similarities between teachers and leadership. So,
Yeah.
just as advice for anytime you find yourself in a position where you are teaching and mentoring and instructing as much as you are leading, do you have anything you could say to that?
I think it's the greatest life in the world. If you're leading, you're teaching, and you have younger people all around you, I can't imagine a better life. Teachers sort of have a halo. Just think if we had, how many, a couple 100,000 more people like you teaching. We wouldn't have the millions of children with no hope for the future. I think it's perfect. If I were your age, I would be right behind you signing on. To say goodbye, I would like to leave this message with you. 10 years from now, when they write the history of your class, may they say of you, the future called. And they responded. They kept the faith. And then 20 years from now, they will say of you, once again, the greatest generation. Thank you very much. I've loved being with you, and it took me 11 hours to get from New York to here. I got here 20 off. Transportation wasn't working very well today, but I got here, and the minute I hit this campus, I was filled with energy. And thank you for the privilege, and I have a bunch of cards somewhere. I want you to visit our website. I'm going to give it to you, www.leadertoleader.org. And one of the things that you're going to enjoy is some new 5-minute videos of great thought leaders. It's all about leadership. And Mark Thompson of Stanford is doing this as his contribution, and you want to see what Alan Mulally of Ford says, or the Dalai Lama, or there are all kinds of great people, just 5 minutes. But you also will have 1,800 pages. We've just redone the website of great thought leaders and writing, and you'll love it. If you don't, I want you to let me know, and I will send you a refund. And somewhere here I have a bunch of cards, and I want to thank you for letting me be here and having somehow exposed to your inspiration has given me more energy than I thought I had a little while ago. So I think this is the bag. I went to Air Force Academy 2 weeks ago to speak to the cadets there, and I was carrying my West Point bag like this, but it was there. It took about 15 minutes for those wonderful people to present to me a wonderful United States Air Force Academy tote bag, book bag. Well, here's some. The wonderful Gloria packed me, but I don't know how to unpack.
We'll make sure to get it all on the site tonight.
Would you?
Yep.
Because
Good deal.
we have so many wonderful people are so generous, and you would just. I'll look one more time in bag one, but I hope that you will tell Dr. Schlesinger that I behaved well enough that I could be invited back. I was here last February, and I'm here this February, and
Well, don't worry, it's on the site.
okay.
And the main thing is if you want to get invited back, we have to do the other half of the class.
Okay.
And so we're going to end this part now, and then we'll see you over in the boardroom shortly, and have a little bit more intimate setting to continue to pursue the conversation. All welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.